Welcome back, rum fans. We're now at that point in the journey where I think it's the next country island that's in line is Trinidad. So today I'm going to shallow dive, give you some brief knowledge about Trinidad rum. Now, when we talk about Trinidad rum, we have to sort of talk about the three distilleries, just to give you an overriding picture. Now, it's important to note there is only one distillery that operates these days, but to get the overriding picture, we need to talk about all three. So we're going to start with Caroni. Now, Caroni is that rum brand that rum geeks cry after. You know, as soon as one becomes available, they're all over it. That's simply because, you know, it goes for a hell of a lot of money. It is a very unique rum. It's definitely not a rum for anyone. I'll be honest, there isn't many Caronis that I haven't tasted many, but there isn't many Caronis that I would actually kind of think, oh yeah, I like that and enjoy that. This is actually, you know, thanks to my membership community who bought me that for my birthday, this is actually one of the better ones that I've tried because it is at least drinkable. They got me a little sample on my birthday as well, a little dram, and that was just like, I could have put it in my car. It was just like petrol. It was just not great, you know, so rum fans love it in that sort of thing, but, you know, it's there. Anyway, Caroni has been closed 22, 23 years? I've lost track of time now, but about just over 20 years, let's say. And it closed down mainly because of a dispute between the two joint owners, which was the Trinidad government and Tate and Lyle at the time. And it sort of came during the demise of, or the decline, I should say, of the sugar sort of trade in the Caribbean. Now, the only thing, when it did close, they left behind huge amounts of stock. I think it was like close to 20,000 barrels of rum that were just kind of left. You know, they were aging, and just Caroni just went out of business, you know. Now, there was also another big contentious issue back then because they got in various valuers to kind of value the sale of the business and who would have these barrels and etc, etc, etc. One valuer put these in at 3 million for the 20,000. I think it was just under. I think it might have been like 18,500 barrels, something like that. But you know, we're talking a hell of a lot of barrels. But one valuer put it in there roughly just over 3 million, and another valuation come out closer to 1 billion. Now, I don't know which one's right or wrong, but I'm assuming that we could sort of split the difference and go quite high up. I'm assuming it would be because of the prices of bottles that you see flying out these days. I'm assuming it would be worth quite a lot more than 3 million. So basically, I think there may have been other buyers, but we can narrow down the buyers to that Caroni rum to 3 people. Angostura being one, the main rum company right here in Liverpool. E&A Share, part of E&A Share, but so the main rum company in the UK up in Liverpool had some, and then Vellier bought some as well. And it's important to note that, so obviously main rum companies came to Liverpool to age, and that some may have gone to Holland, but mainly in Liverpool where they age up there. Vellier's went to DDL, Guyana, to carry on aging there. Now, even though Caroni is renowned for this big, bold, oily kind of petrol-y kind of vibe going on, it's important to note that they did actually distill off column still rums, column stills. So it's that, you know, in itself kind of should go. So many people have a downer on column still. They think it's all about pot, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, to get these flavours off of column still, you know, it is possible. So don't think rum, even when we're talking about, you know, Spanish, Latino, Hispanic kind of countries, don't think that column still rum is unflavorful, whatever word you want to call, because it is evident, you know, from Trinidad rums in general, they all pretty much are column still. And the last fact bomb to give you about Caroni is that the British Navy, early 1900s, the British Navy started buying Caroni rum to put into their blend for their, you know, the tot that all the British Navy used to get during their daily ration. So Caroni was part of that blend. We don't know how much, we don't know, there's never a recipe, but it did, you know, it may have even not been in every single tot that went out. We just know that the British Navy started to buy and import and ship it back to London, where it all got blended into their big vats. Now, from Caroni, we move on to Fernandez. Now, Fernandez is actually a guy he was Trinidad's richest man, businessman. He also owned, so basically he bought a defunct sugar mill and a distillery and started to learn how to distill his own rum. So he started distilling. As a businessman, he also owned the Queen's Park Hotel, which is the Queen's Park Swizzle, is why that's famous. That is part of, or comes from the hotel. So Fernandez started to become a big player in Trinidad rum. And by big player, I mean by the mid 1970s, Fernandez, he was actually responsible. His distillery, he bought another one in the 70s, but at that point he was actually responsible for close to 80% of the rum being sold from Trinidad. Now this is where this nicely ties into Angostura, because it's at that point, we know Angostura haven't got their normal bitters, but we know Angostura are pretty famous for their bitters. And up until, yes, they did produce rum, but the rum that they produced before that, before this, the 70s, was pretty much primarily to go into their bitters. Their bitters was the huge thing, but they've become more and more well known for their rums. And this all started because they bought, in a joint venture between Angostura and Bacardi, they actually bought the Fernandez distillery. And to note, when we talk about Angostura, we actually talk about TDL, Trinidad Distillers Limited. In the same vein that we've talked about where in Guyana, where you have DDL, Demerara Distillers Limited, and their brand is El Dorado, their only brand per se, you know, it's very much the same thing with TDL. Trinidad Distillers Limited is Angostura. Now, even to this day, it's important to note that Angostura still produce a hell of a lot of rum. They are one of the world's biggest producers of rum. But a lot of that gets sold in bulk to independent bottlers, to E&A Share, to, you know, other people that want to age up their rum and rum blends and stuff like that. It wasn't until sort of the mid 1990s where Angostura, the brand of rum, actually became more and more into prominence. But even now, as I say, they do sell more to other people than they sell to as Angostura. Now, we've touched on the bitters, but the bitters play an important role in Angostura's journey, because Angostura, up until, you know, the point where they started to focus on the rum, even as late as sort of like the mid 90s or the early 90s, Angostura's role, they just needed to produce a light, easygoing rum to use in those bitters. They didn't really focus on the rum. So all they really used was a column still rum. They had no pot. It was column still rum. It was short fermentation. And to be honest, it's pretty much the same now. Now, in this series of videos, you know, I do like to give you a little bit of knowledge about the stills, because that, you know, that you can then kind of learn and, you know, see what you like and kind of associate that with types of stills. Now, it's important to note that Angostura, as I said, they are column stills. They do have 3 column stills. They are 5. They have 3 5-column stills. There are only 2 in use. The other one is there if they need it. It can be fired up again and ready to go, but they only really use 2 of those 5-column stills. But it's important to note, and this is what I said with Caroni, it's important to note that those column stills, if you are good at what you do, if you're good at distilling, those column stills can produce light, medium-bodied and heavy-bodied rums. Do not think that heavy-bodied rums are, you know, only come from pot stills, because that is wrong. Okay, a pot still, heavy rum, is going to be very different to a column still, but you're still going to have those lovely, rich, vibrant, unctuous rums off column stills if you want them. Now, to give you some idea of the sheer volume of rum that Angostura sell, I haven't got sales volumes per se, but to kind of relate this, they do not grow enough sugarcane on island to actually cope with the demand that they need, or to cope with the volume of sugarcane that they need. So, like most distillers around the Caribbean, not many distillers are actually self-sufficient, or rum brands are self-sufficient with sugarcane. That's what a lot of people miss. You know, don't think that Foursquare and all that grow their own sugarcane. They don't, they import it. But with Angostura, they're actually open about where they get their sugarcane from. A lot of it comes from the Dominican Republic. A lot of it comes from South America, but they do also use Fiji sugarcane. Now, when it comes to talking about a GI with Trinidad, I don't really see too much evidence of this. I certainly can't find any. We're doing research about a geographical indicator. The only bits I can sort of give you, that rum, when it comes to this, rum has to be aged on site, and it has to be aged in ex-bourbon barrels. But obviously, you know, when TDL sell rum to E&A Share, for instance, or the main rum company in Liverpool, obviously that's still going to be Angostura or sorry, Trinidad rum that comes off there. So it's not quite of a GI as such. Also, I think that is, and Stan, again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, anyone that's got the knowledge, but also I think that is it's TDL's own kind of quality control, is saying we will only aged our rums in ex-bourbon barrels. But here's a little bit of knowledge I did find while trying to research and trying to find a little bit of a GI. I kind of like this, is that how they age their rums. This is quite cool, and I've not really seen evidence of this in other rums, but their light rum that comes off their column still so it's barreled and casked, it's 75% ABV, and it's aged up to 2 years old. So all their light rums are aged up to 2 years old, but they go into the barrel at 75%. However, their sort of medium and heavy bodied rums go into cask at 55 to 65% ABV. So heavier, more robust rums are lower ABV when they go into a cask, and then they're obviously aged for much longer. So I find that quite interesting as well. But there's another little bit of interesting fact knowledge coming out here that I found out doing the research for this video. When it comes to colouring and sugar, we all know, we talk about E158 quite a lot. But it's becoming actually to a little bit of knowledge when you deep dive that actually a lot of brands don't actually use E158. They actually make their own homemade caramel. Now, caramel doesn't have to be sweet. Caramel is actually kind of got this bitter edge to it. So what Angostura do, or TDL do, they actually make two different types of caramel. Where is it? So the caramel to colour, they use, this is it. So they use white sugar to make caramel to colour their rum. Is that right? So I'll say that again. They use, to colour their rum, this is where I'm going with this. To colour their rum, they make a caramel from white sugar. But to colour their bitters, their Angostura bitters, they actually use or make caramel from brown sugar, which I find quite fascinating because obviously that gives you a very different taste profile. But that is Trinidad rum in a nutshell. Pretty much the only, unless you want to spend a few £100 on a bottle of Caroni, pretty much the only brands that you will see is Angostura. As I say, there are many kind of independent bottlers, even like Bristol here will do a TDL, a Trinidad, release that may not be Caroni. They will do something like this. So there are many multiple independent distillers out there, but the actual only brands, the only real brands that comes out of Angostura, it comes out of Trinidad, is Angostura Rum.